suppose if you wanted to describe what sort of podcast we are, we're not a mental health podcast, but
definitely.
everything involves mental health. So it's like we're a health podcast.
There is a reason why you have anxiety, and let's look at that and reflect on that. And what are the, what is the soul experiencing? What are the lessons of the soul that they're not integrating? That this could be, this anxiety is the body telling them something.
Welcome to Just Between Us, intimate conversations about things that matter. I'm Briar.
I'm Dana. We hope you join us for this wild ride. Buckle up. So I'm a life coach, but I think I started late with my curiosity of people, and I don't actually take that back. I was, as a kid, always curious about people and asking questions, and always as a child, always would be in places, be like, what are you doing? What do you guys sleep together? What's your life like? What's your, like, really random, inappropriate questions. And I remember my mom be like, Dana, stop asking these questions. And it never changed. Like, I always, as I got older, was always curious about people. And only up until 3-4 years ago, I was like, wow, maybe I can do this for like a living, like ask people shit. And then it started to unfold. So that's one part. But then also, like, when I look at me and you wanting to create this podcast together, it's how the universe worked and brought us together. Because when I left Oman, I think I was 29, 30, and I knew I wanted something different. I wanted to change. I felt frustrated. I felt stuck. I wanted something different. And when I moved to Dubai, because my husband was here, I quit my job. And even though I used to work, but I felt like I was bored. I wanted something, but I didn't know what that something was. And when I moved here, I kind of went through a crisis. Like, I was like, who am I? What am I? Because again, when you go out of your family dynamic and your society, you kind of, on some level, you kind of fuse with that. You think you are that. When you get out of that, it really, like, your ego, everything about you, you're like, who am I outside of this? Even though that's such a feeling, but I needed that to happen in order to find out who I really am and try to pick up pieces of understanding myself. But in that crisis, I'll never forget, I was at my acupuncturist, and I'm telling her, I need to see a therapist. I need to talk to someone. Like, I'm not feeling good. And she's like, I heard about this Australian lady, and I think she's really good. I've heard good reviews and I'm like, I want her. But something in me was weird with all these needles. I'm like, I want her. How do I get her? Where is she? What? And she's like, oh, I think she's here. She gave me the number. And I remember calling the center. And I was like, I want to see this Australian chick. She didn't even know your name, by the way, then. So I want to see this Australian chick. How many Australians do you have? She's like, oh, we only have one at that time. So I was like, I want to see her. I didn't even bother looking at, and usually the Virgo in me, I want to look at the profile and see if this person's a match. I didn't. I just called and I'm like, I want to see this Australian chick you have there. She's like, oh, no, we have to first interview you to see, like, what are your issues and match you. I'm like, you can do all that, but this is the person I want to see. She's like, no. I'm like, this is I was so adamant. And it was, now I understand, because now I understand more about me, the soul, the signs. But then I didn't. It was something outside of me that was in me that was doing all of this. That when I look back, I'm like, that Dana wouldn't really do that. So, and then that was when I met you, I remember. And then I got pregnant right after that. And I think my journey working with you has opened up so much for me. So first, obviously in a professional setting, but like about understanding parts of myself that I thought were vague. And I up until then, I don't like vague. Like, it's like, oh, what does that mean? And I think when you're tapping into spirituality and connecting to the essence of who you are, there is a lot of vagueness. It is, especially when we live in a society or in a world that's very clear cut, this, that, go, do, and, whereas that part of you, which is actually, now I'm realizing, is the creative part of you, the essence of who you are, that doesn't come that way. That comes from a very different way. And you model that for me, but you would always try to activate that within me. And I remember at the beginning, it was so frustrating. I'm like, what the does that mean? Like, what do you mean? Like, make it clear. And I remember, and That journey opened me up in so many ways. And I think when you start getting activated like that, the universe starts bringing you things. So being a mom then shifted me a lot. And you were there obviously in that journey. And I started, they tell you, tap into your intuition. I'm like, what the is that? Like, what do you mean? Like all my life, I was told what I needed to do. And that was where I sought safety. Now they're telling me you need to raise this child and find that safety within you and trust within you to make him safe. I'm like, what? That was scary. And I'm so glad that I met you before that I had a bit of a touch or feeling or understanding of that big world that I didn't understand. But then that was, again, as you know, a big learning for me. So in that process of becoming a mom, then I started doing life coaching training, and then COVID happened, and I did theta healing training, which is again going into the subconscious. And everything, and you were a big part of that journey. Everything started like adding on and unfolding and unfolding and unfolding. So first was me understanding my context, me understanding who I am, me going into getting to know myself, then me understanding the subconscious mind and understanding my belief system and how that's creating the life I'm in. And we stopped working together, but we would always meet together, like socially, and I would talk to you about what I'm doing, and you would always support me. You would always be like, okay, you want to start coaching? Here, take the space, come use my space. And I'll never forget, even before that, we were sitting once in session, you were telling me, you have it. I'm like, what do you mean it? What do you mean, what? And I got very because I've never really had someone mirror that for me. Like, you are in this and you're mirroring. And I felt so seen, but then so scared because it's like, oh. So again, you supported me a lot in that frame of coaching and creating a space where I can coach and build that. I think it's me, the confidence that I can do this. Then the theta healing came. Then obviously when COVID was happening, and we would meet up and talk about it, and I would tell you about, oh my God, the subconscious mind and the world. Like I was like, whoa, like everything started making sense. And then I remember we were sitting and I was telling you about our belief system and as women and how our belief system, how we create the partners we have in our life from the patterns we've grown up with. And you were talking, sharing, you're like, why don't we create a women's group? And I'm like, yeah, I like that. You're like, yeah, okay, let's meet next week and we decide the format and the this and that. I'm like, okay. I thought we were just discuss it. Like, let's just discuss the fluffy stuff, And then you're like, yeah, okay. So when we open Free Spirit Collective, then we can start doing the workshops. And I'm like, okay. And so you kind of like force me, but in a part, like, you kind of created the framework for me that there was no way I was going to say no. Because this is something I wanted to do. Like for me, you were like a mentor, but also like a guardian angel, because and I think we all need that in life. Like when you start taking a step to getting curious about who you are, what you are, people will come to you and be open, be receptive, because they will come to you and they will help you. They will help you help yourself. They will help you see yourself in ways that you didn't think were possible or you didn't even know existed. And that's helped me actually heal a lot of my mother wounding or female wounding, that I'm sure we will explore later. And it's funny because even if I get, say, triggered by you, which I know triggers are all lessons, has nothing to do with you. It's about me, and it's about what is the wounding that I carry that I'm perceiving that in you. So it's helped me a lot. And then creating these women's groups has helped me also build trust in myself, but able to see other women and myself through other women. And the more compassion and build more compassion for myself so that I can have more compassion for others, and that's when I was like, wow, why don't we do something on a bigger scale where we bring different people, have conversations around many topics, whether it be mother wound, whether it be astrology and therapy, because that's been a big part for me in helping me grow as well. Healing, different modalities to healing, because it's helped me a lot in my life. And it's like, maybe you would help other people too. And then also in these women's groups, for example, and even in myself, I always have this thing of, I don't want to feel alone. And when we're in these groups, you realize, oh, I'm not alone. This carries the same wounding as me. It might look differently, but wow, I see you and I feel you and I get you. And just being in that space of like, I feel you, I get you, I see you, man, that's like, no therapy can do that. Like like you leave there feeling, wow, I can do anything. But in that process, I want to take people with me too, So then that's when we would always talk about, interviews, this, that. And you'd always tell me, you do the podcast, you do the podcast, you do. I'm like, okay. So then this summer I came back and I'm like, okay, I'm going to organize it. And we were sitting talking and then you were telling me something. And I'm like, dude, I don't understand. Why don't we do it together? Because we already do a lot of things together. We complement each other. And I was shocked because before I asked you and you were like, yeah, no, I think it's a you thing. And I was like, okay, And then this time you said, yeah. And I'm like, yes. But it just happened like that. And then we're here. So, yeah. And I'm by nature, as you know, curious. And so the idea of bringing people, doing fantastic things, living their purpose, and in that process of living their purpose, helping others do that at whatever capacity, whether it be healing their unresolved trauma, healing trauma in the body, working on stuckness in the body, working on pleasure and finding pleasure within themselves, living life from a state of pleasure. Like, why in the hell not? If that's helped me, why don't we create a space where people people feel heard, seen, and that they have an avenue where they can go explore parts of who they are? Maybe some people will hear part of the podcast and say, oh no, I don't agree with that. And then they'll be driving and be like, oh yeah, maybe I do that. Maybe that does show up in my life. To build this thing of you're not alone. You're part of a community. You might not feel that you are in maybe your own community, but you are in a bigger scale. And, planting that seed of reflection, of maybe bringing the subconscious mind into the conscious awareness, so you can see how you are actually driving the car of your life. You might not be aware of it, but as you build that awareness, you can start really shifting and creating the life you want. So we're here.
We're here.
Yeah.
It's just occurring to me as I sit here listening to you, like, what a long journey.
Yeah.
Like, this is, so I suppose we have to remember that we're not alone sitting here now, right? There are people. Yeah. So hi, people. So I'm Briar, and what Dan is referencing happened 9 years ago. Wow. So this has been almost a decade in the making.
Yeah.
And how many hours we've sat together and talked about the things that we believe matter, and we're hoping other people think matter too. And just, it's quite epic. We're finally doing this.
Yeah.
So this is good. So from my perspective, I was hesitant to do it with you because I could see it so clearly as a fit for you. Because I've watched you in countless groups, in settings, one-on-one, and with people, and I watch how you function. And you ask the questions that others are thinking that no one wants to ask. And you don't seem to have a block to that. And it's just who you are and how you've been, I'm sure, since you're a little girl. But that is quite the superpower, I think. Because what you do is, for a group, what I've observed, and hopefully you're going to do this now for people who we may never meet in person, who may even be listening to this in other countries, who knows, is by asking that question, by having no block to asking the question that you're almost like picking up out of the ether, you just grant permission for everyone to shift into their creative curiosity, right? And because you're not stuck in kind of an egoic frame of how will it make me look to ask this question, which is where we get stuck. That's what the nature of that block is. You grant permission for everyone just to chill and relax. And so what that creates is a space. And so I think that can happen in this medium too.
Yeah.
I know I listen to all the podcasts. I am a podcast addict. And so what I love is the intimacy.
I second that. I get all my podcasts from you, which is good for me.
Do you?
Yeah.
But it's like, it's that intimacy of it that I love. It's I'm listening in to a conversation. Oh, wow. I love my life to be full of these rich conversations. And so often over the years when I've been sitting with people, people have said, oh, wouldn't it be cool if this was recorded? Other people could hear this, right? Which could just be narcissism. But I like to think it's because something dynamic is happening in the room. And so we think about, when I think about where my initial hesitance came from, it wasn't that I don't love that. It's the performance element of this that took me a while to get my head around. Like I suppose that block which exists more in me than in you, to opening up the space. But I'm here with you, so I feel that effect. So this is cool. So my work, because we should talk about where I'm coming from too, I guess, is like you as a little kid, there's the seeds. And there's an amazing Jungian analyst by the name of James Hillman, who you've heard me go on about quite a bit, who wrote a book called The Soul's Code. And in that, he's talking about this thing called acorn theory, which is that in the child, or I would say in the start of anything, you see the seed of what the thing is that it's going to become. So in terms of you, as a little child being like, tell me more. What do you do there? What do you do there? Like, what's that about? Like that complete lack of block to understanding what's going on here. I'm fascinated. It's the opposite of being self-conscious. It's being other interested, right? Yeah. In me, I guess I had a similar thing, but it was a little different in that I think the desire to be a therapist was born in me, right? And so from about the age of 7, I would just organically, and I didn't really call it this. I didn't say I'm going to be a therapist. It wasn't like I was playing a game, but I would just get together with one friend at a time, and we would, I was brought up in Australia. We'd walk around the school oval at lunch, and they would tell me their problems and talk, and I would listen. And that just felt like something that I could do. It wasn't like I even had a story of it at that age, because you don't really have an egoic thing going on at that age. You just do what you do and it's fun. So I would do this, and this sort of progressed through my school years, and I became that sort of therapist role for a lot of my friends, and anyone out there who's listening to this who works in the helping professions would probably this role at school, where you just find yourself being that person who can listen, or who can hold secrets, or who can maybe offer something that's a bit helpful. So then I did what a lot of people do, in that I finished school and completely ignored all of that, and went and did the university. We all do, and went and did the university. Well, not everyone. Some people are wiser earlier.
Yeah, but some people, because I think people study biology and, I want to be, and they know it. But I think these kind of things that we have, I think sometimes it's we don't have enough, I don't know, maybe it's support, or our education doesn't support, I don't know.
Well, I understand it now. Like everything, we understand things in retrospect, right? Yeah. So in retrospect, I understand exactly what, I guess my soul was up to, or what I was doing, but true. I was completely unconscious because you would think that the correct fit would have been to go straight from school to university to study psychology. That, of course, was a no-brainer. But not only did I not spot that, no one around me spotted that. I was like the teachers, the school counselors, nothing, no one. So I went into the university course that I got the grades for, which was a hard to get into course thing, right? So I went to that, and it was a complete disaster and total mismatch. And so I promptly dropped out after 9 months. And then didn't actually go back to formal academic study for many years, right? And then did that for like a decade. Yeah. So it was an interrupted journey. But looking back on it now, when I think about what I do, essentially I'm a therapist, right? So my formal qualifications are in counselling psychology, but I've been a yoga teacher for 20 years. I've been an astrologer just as long as that. And of course, the astrologer part I've hidden from the mainstream for a long time, because people just don't understand it. They don't understand that it's working with archetypes, and it has a strong tradition even within psychology, especially in the transpersonal psychologies, the Jungian work, that sort of stuff. So that's been on the down low, but now that it's having a renaissance, I'm bringing it out, and I use it, and it's really helpful.
But see, that's what I love about because I've been to therapists before in my 20s. And I remember when I was in college as well, like what you said, I went to university undecided. And that's what I like about the US. You can be undecided. And I wish I could have graduated undecided and just explore a bunch of shit like classes because I didn't know anything. But I felt like this anxiety of I need to decide, and I need to do well. And I remember wanting to see a therapist because I couldn't sleep and it was affecting me. And I'll never forget the therapist. So, what are you feeling? Okay. So what can we do about that? Like it was very like prescriptive. I'm like, bitch, this isn't working for me. Bye. And I remember seeing another therapist after that when I came back to Oman, and I just felt like, I don't know, I felt like I was in a box, like, you know, like, and it just didn't work for me. Like I wanted more. And what I love about you as a therapist is, yes, I'm sure you use your therapy modalities and tools, but you know, like you also look at me as a soul with an experience, a soul as these are learned, like you just said now, like everything happens for a reason, and you needed to go into your 30s to do therapy or going to school because you needed those 20s to teach you certain things, like, you know, bring you the yoga and then go into the astrology and how you bring that into your therapy. It's not just the therapy that you study and then that's the human you're working with. You're looking at them as a whole with your whole experience. I don't know if what I'm saying makes sense, but that's why I like therapists who, like now you're seeing a lot of psychiatrists who do German new medicine, who are also astrologers. And
Holistic.
I'm like, these are my kind of people because you're not just a person with anxiety. There is a reason why you have anxiety. And let's look at that and reflect on that. And what are the, you know, what is the soul experiencing? What are the lessons of the soul that they're not integrating? That this could be, this anxiety is the body telling them something. Rather than you have anxiety, take the medication. Okay, you are fighting with your mom. Okay, like, you know, like it's very cause A, B, C, but there's so much more. And you bring that, and I haven't maybe personally have seen other therapists who bring that, and so I get excited when I see more people who look at it in a more holistic way.
Look, it's happening, it's shifting, like medicine's having this shift towards more functional medicine. Psychology is much more functional, and there are loads of people working with their whole selves, you know, and they all do it in a different way. My particular interest, and I guess the acorn, right, is to look at things through a spiritual lens. And that's just what I can offer. So I'll draw to me the people who need that or want that, right? And other people don't want or need that. I don't attract those people. So, you know,
different strokes for different
folks.
folks.
It's like we're all working in that sphere, and it takes many different approaches, and it takes many, because there are many different people. Yeah. But I guess where we're moving from as a field is from this very much mired in the sort of the medical model, biological model only, where for a long time they looked at things like depression, anxiety, etc., like that there must be a physiological cause for this, and they really have moved away from that. Is physiology involved in it? 100%, it's involved in everything, but they've really moved away from that. And so the psychiatrists that, you know, that have been colleagues of mine are very holistic, very contextual, like they're taking into account the whole functioning of the whole human, and it's really inspiring to be around. And there's loads of good authors coming into the sphere, and like we will get some of those people to talk to us, because that somebody can straddle that heavy medical model and then push themselves into and explore, and then have the gravitas of that to bring to it, with then we've been so socialized to revere doctors and the medical paradigm, and quite frankly give away our power to it.
Yeah.
And that is, hopefully we're moving on from that as we become a lot more educated in ourselves, and that breakdown of that special position in society with its own language. You know, they would work in Latin, you know, and then the common folk would be like, oh, the doctor said, right?
Yeah.
So
and to this day you see it still happen, you know.
especially in older generations.
Exactly. Like even me when my yeah, again, when I moved back to Oman, I felt very anxious working. I didn't know. And I remember going to psychologists. I didn't feel anything. So then I thought maybe I need to take something. So I
Yeah.
went to a psychiatrist. I'm like, maybe he can help me. I remember he just gave me pills and said, here and go about your life. And that's it. So there was no support, even though I wanted it. So I remember taking the pills and exploring different modalities to find healing, trying different,
Yeah.
Reiki and all that. And I wanted someone that I could talk to, someone that I can relate to, or can relate to me and see me, so I really struggled. I remember I was, okay, it helped, but it was like a Band-Aid
Look,
for me.
there's definitely
And not saying that that's not a good thing, but I think if you have that alongside support and help where you're also exploring,
sure.
it's a win-win,
Sure. I mean, there's a time for that, and there can be a real time for medication. They help alleviate pain.
Yeah.
And there can be times when that's all you've got in you. It's just to have less pain. And you don't have the energy psychically or physiologically to engage in the growth, right? That can change over time, right? I think that the paradigm shift that we're seeing is away from understanding the mind, the emotions, and the behaviors as being derived from some kind of broken story.
Yeah.
Like I have something wrong with me, and therefore if I fix it, like if I had pneumonia, right? It's a pathogen. I would apply a penicillin.
Yeah.
I'm showing my lack of medical knowledge right now. And then I will not have pneumonia, right? Well,
Yeah.
you can't do that with the syndromes that are mental, psychological, emotional, physical, spiritual syndromes, which are what we give these labels to, right? So you can't understand them in the same way. And so there's just loads more people rushing into the space. It's like a flowering of consciousness that we're here to see. There's a lot of difficult things going on in the world, but there's also a lot of really exciting things going on in the world. And this flowering of consciousness around how do we help each other be better humans? Very exciting. And so I guess that's what we're trying to do here, right? We're trying to draw in, and we have already drawn quite a few that we're going to have great conversations with, to explore their little nook and cranny of this world. So we want to go in deep to a lot of different, very specific areas, because there's people working, for instance, in mental health. We can go into that. But there's also people working in the activist sphere, which is super interesting to understand how they sort of bring themselves to that, how they envision the world, and how they kind of what's interesting to me is how people activate their empowerment, whether that to be to heal from something or to change something or to improve something or to express something. So creatives fascinate me. So we're not, if I suppose if you wanted to describe what sort of podcast we are, we're not a mental health podcast, but
definitely.
everything involves mental health. So it's like we're a health podcast, but that's not understanding it in this biological way. So it creates a space for those discussions and, again, that intimacy that we want to create so that anyone listening feels they're a part of that discussion and, like you're hoping for, can truly take something. Almost like, do you remember years ago I think it was probably the first seed. So if we think about the acorn of this, I said to you or you said to me, and I can't remember which of us came up with it, but we had this whole discussion around fly on the wall therapy. How it would be cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. You were saying that. I remember.
Was it me?
Yeah. We were having a conversation, I think. Yeah, I would. Yes, because I was saying about something about interview so that people know because I was saying about my experience with therapy and there's, what people sometimes get scared of what therapy looks like but if we were to show that it's actually really activating and it can really, and then you mentioned, you're like, what about fly on the wall therapy? I'm like, what is that?
Yeah, it's this listening in. I love this idea of listening in, and we have to, if we think about the need for help in the world, right? People are suffering, people are struggling, people are post-COVID, right? Especially but not even just post-COVID, just in the modern world, right? So we live like you and I do a lot of discussions around this. We live in a world that's not, when I say the world, I'm, I suppose, referring more to this kind of heavily consumerist, competitive, capitalist-driven. There isn't anything necessarily that wrong with those things, but they can overextend. Yeah. And when we live inside that paradigm, our bodies are not made to live inside that paradigm. We get hammered. Our nervous systems we're seeing all the lifestyle diseases, all the allostatic load diseases. So like the wear and tear from too much fast-paced living, too much competition, too many long hours, too much living inside our heads. And so when we think about the impact of all that, everybody in some way has their struggles with that. So we're thinking about this need for more and more people to find therapeutic spaces and therapeutic interventions. Now, you're not going to do that one person at a time in therapy because, one, therapy is prohibitively expensive for a lot of people. They don't have the means to access it or they don't have the insurance, right? So it's a bit of a rarefied space. Also, they can't afford not to be working. So there's a lot going on in therapy where it's you're often dealing with the top 2% of privilege. Yeah. Now we think about how to scale this stuff. Well, you think about things like groups, and a lot of them exist in our city. Like there are a lot of really dedicated professionals offering free and pro bono and this and that, and it's growing and growing and growing, which is amazing. That scales it a little bit where people can gain a bit of access, but still then they've got to be able to like drive there or not be at work or come at the time it's on, right? Or if they're doing it from home, like be able to Zoom in. And these things, like you can see the privilege hidden in it, yeah? And so I guess one of my main motivations for this too and why I love podcasting so much is it starts to get more and more democratic. Like, yes, you need a certain amount of tech to access a podcast, but it's starting to get maybe to people who aren't going to go to therapy for many reasons. Some people have big cultural blocks to therapy or their families don't support it or, and we're not just about therapy here, but therapeutic conversations that can help people open up to their own self. We really are, I love this about podcasting because it scales it. Yeah. And I wanted to be part of it. So I thought I'd get over myself and my woman's anxiety. Yeah. And, I'm very comfortable in the one-on-one space or a small intimate group. And this is not my comfort zone. So, but that's okay because maybe we can invite people on to talk about that. Yeah. Yeah. So.
And technically this feels like a one-on-one.
Yeah, it is. It is. And then we will have a guest and it'll feel like intimate. And that's fine. As long as we can work with our attention to stay there, then maybe it can stay feeling impactful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I don't know, there's this element of, like what we have this thing called intimate conversations about things that matter. Since I was a child, I like the things people don't talk about, like the dark. I like to put it on the table and just, let's talk about it. I don't know, because I think when you keep things hidden too much, you don't kind of deal with them. It's like when you need to take a shit, but you keep it in, it ain't good for you. So might as well just let it rip and just, let's just see it.
Well, I'm giggling because my experience of you is you're like what we call, like I call you like you're a subtitle reader. So like, how people talking to each other and sometimes you can just sense there are subtitles that they're not saying. Yeah. Like, and you tend to, I've watched you do this many times, you like look at people talking and then you read their subtitles and then you read them out. And what it does is I think because you manage to do it in a way that's often humorous and you use really humanistic metaphors and you just do it spontaneously, is that it doesn't feel threatening. Yeah. And that's what I'm hoping. Like, so we're going to get people talking to us who are really, we've got some people lined up who are
I'm really excited.
Really serious people in their fields and they're all awesome people. Doing really good work, some people doing very hard work, some people doing really fun work, but what I'm looking forward to is watching kind of your effect on them.
Yeah.
When you know, and I can't help be around someone and not go into therapy mode. So whether they like it or not, they're going to get therapized here. But
Yay.
yay. But what I'm looking forward to is sort of taking people who are really brilliant and then pushing them to just go deep with us, to see what happens. I think it's going to be very interesting. Even if we have a listenership of 5 people, as long as those 5 people are really getting something from this, I think we've succeeded. Yeah.
Yeah, and even in that journey though of like having people and interviewing people, discussing, I love learning. I think there's always something to learn from a person, from a conversation, and what I like is the mystery in what you're going to learn. Sometimes you think you're going to learn this when I go into this. We're going to interview this person, we're going to discuss these things. But actually what might come out of it for me or for you or for the listener will be something very different than what you expected. It will always activate you in the way it needs to activate.
Oh, yeah.
And I like that mystery. I like that excitement.
It's a journey.
Yeah.
It's a journey. So, you like I always believe, like, what's that saying they say here? Trust in Allah, but type your camel. Like,
Really? What is it? I've never.
have you heard this?
No.
Trust in Allah, but tie up your camel. Like, so it's this pragmatic. So it's like, have faith. Like, so the tie up your camel bit for me is, you have someone coming on, you do your research. You research, you read, you talk to them before, you blah, blah, you do all that stuff. But then when you get in here, you let go and you let it happen like a journey, because the conversations that I've had with people or that I've listened to, and they feel very alive and have the potential of activation. Because I think, I'll come to that in a second, but that's what we're trying for, right? So, just what you were saying about activation is interesting, because I don't, personally, and this is just I want to say this, like, there are so many different ways of helping people and so many different ways of doing therapy. And in no way would I say that my way is the way. But my understanding of the therapeutic space is, and this is backed up with research too on what they look at what works in therapy. But anyway, so it's congruent with that. To me, it's all about activation. It's an experience. What actually does the healing is not so much the informational exchange, although the informational exchange has to be good. So it's like, as a therapist, you have to have done your work previously. You have to have a good library, right? All the study you've done, all the experience you've had, all that sort of stuff, all the ongoing training you're doing. I think of it like your library, right? But then when you're with somebody, it's very much about the ritual of the experience that you can create in the room. So it's about our nervous systems and our feelings, and then it's about the type of exchange we're having. And that's, and you pluck from your library, right? But that actually does the work. That's actually, it's not, because we're not working inside broken, fixed. So it's not like that fixes the person. They're not broken. But that gives that person potentially the parts back of themselves that they are struggling to connect with on their own. And I think that's what therapy does. I call it waking up the inner therapist. That's how I get my head around it. Like, if I'm with you for the first time, I want to wake up your inner therapist, because I would say to you, like, imagine you had a therapist that knew everything about you, that understood completely your relationship with your mum, your dad, everything that's happened, your schooling, your
the intricacies,
all the stuff, and that therapist knew that, or understood that, and were available 24/7 and free. That's the best therapist, right? So my job is to wake that part up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what's helped me a lot? You've activated that in my journey a lot. But also what's helped me a lot in that is shadow work. And that's what I hope in one of our discussions we would be getting someone to talk about this. And being kind of, one part is working with the parts of me that are hidden and bringing those online, let's say, but then also being my doing my inner mothering, that has helped me a lot. That I find is helping me. And it's kind of like me being my inner therapist, me giving myself that compassion and feeling seen, like what I would want a therapist to do for me. But like you said, at 10 at night or at whatever time, I'm giving that in the moment, because sometimes, and I think that's usually when shit hits the fan, is you get the trigger in the moment. You're tired, you're whatever, someone says something, boom, boom, it goes online and you're creating a story out of nothing. And then that's when my inner therapist, or like I like to inner mother, starts, and it's like, kind of soothes me. And that's definitely an episode we want to have to discuss more about that, because I think it's very easy, and I'm guilty of that. When that goes online, when that trigger comes up, it's very easy for me to go outside to look for things to soothe me, whether it be food, whether it be on Instagram, whether it be taking it out on some person, or this world has made it so easy for me to seek outside, and very challenging for me to go inside and be like, okay, what's happening now? What's showing up for me? And the back of my head, I want to like go and blame the world, and because again, my learning history. So I want to. So yes, it is. And going back to what you're saying, and I'm curious actually, and I know what you're gonna say. I think I know, but I've had many people who've helped me. And again, we're going to be bringing so many people, whether therapists, whether healers, spiritual workers, all kinds of people.
Doctors,
yes. But there have been a lot of people who have helped me also on my way that are not even therapists. They're different kinds of healers.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes I wonder, in the therapy school, because I'm guilty of that too. Sometimes I'm like, oh my God, maybe I need to go study and get more specialized, because to be legitimate, and that's my own thing, right? That's my own wounding, but sometimes it's like, am I doing this because, yes, part of me does love knowledge, and all kinds of knowledge. I seek it. It gives me life on, and helps me understand what I'm working with in more depth. So then there's that one part, but then is the one part, that I'm doing this to seek legitimacy, because on some level, and you do feel it sometimes, that there is this view that the only way to work on yourself is in that paradigm. That is one paradigm that does work.
Sure.
But then there's also other modalities that do really work. And I know you are the type that explore, even within yourself, also different modalities. But what's your view of that? Like, that some people say, oh yeah, I'm working with her, but I'm also seeing this healer, and then this healer activated something within me, and, that maybe sometimes a therapy setting wouldn't have.
Sure. Happens all the time.
Yeah.
Some people find it through sports.
Yeah.
Some people find it through animals. Yeah. Like, the world is therapeutic if we let it be, and we think there's a saying in the type of the modality that I'm trained mostly in, which is acceptance and commitment therapy. We say there's one most important word that we use in therapeutic space, or that we can use as a human, and it's and.
Oh, okay.
So I'm feeling this, and it's stressing me out, and I'm noticing it, and I'm exploring and because it's about exploring and opening and building and giving yourself more room to move. But as humans, we become we've been socialized as minds to be very dichotomous in our thinking. This or this. So what do I believe in? Do I believe in the scientific model? Do I believe in the woo-woo stuff? And let's separate it. And now, as you're noticing, heavy-hitting scientists are meditating, or heavy-hitting scientists are also exploring what was seen as woo. It's not woo. Often what we call the fluffy woo-woo stuff has a larger, longer evidence base, because it reaches back into wisdom traditions of different, but we live inside a kind of a very white patriarchal model with medicine. And it's not that it doesn't have its offerings and that they aren't life-saving, especially in acute circumstances, but not just acute, loads of circumstances, but there is room at the table for everything. And we need to embrace that and so I guess that's what we are
exactly
hoping to do here. So if we think about, as we sort of draw to the end of this, our first little mini episode so you can get an idea of some of the motivations behind this project. We just want to be in the and, right? We want to open up to people doing this therapeutic work, and then we want to kind of just put them on the spot, right? But in a nice way.
Yeah.
Where we want to ask them all your questions.
Yeah, because there's also no one size fits all. So the more we explore
Absolutely.
different things, and there's nothing in absolute on its own. That's I think what excites us both, to explore different avenues and how this impacted even maybe sometimes myself or you, or we haven't yet tried, but listen in and explore.
Absolutely. And in this first, I guess, season, we'll call it, we're looking at topics like intuitive eating, or moving away from the diet culture obsession of our society, female sexuality and tantra. That's, going to be really fascinating. Therapy and the future of therapy, and astrology and how astrology kind of comes into that. What else are we looking at?
So
women's empowerment panel,
yeah.
The creative process.
And then also maybe some shadow work as well.
Absolutely. The dark feminine.
Yeah, activation.
Yeah. And we're also looking at health. So we're looking at sort of like an alternative way of looking at physical health. So they're just loosely some of the topics that we've got coming up, and more, but we haven't got those done yet. So so that's what we're planning. So, I mean, if I had, let's just talk about kind of an aim and a wish.
Yeah.
So you think about it for a second. I'll go first because I know you'll want to think about this.
Yeah.
So if I had an aim for this project that we're doing, it would be that we make content, we manage to make content with our guests that in somehow is able to touch, improve the life of someone that maybe we'll never meet somewhere, and then everyone else that listens to it. So it's this kind of idea of impact or quality or scaling of the mental health world out of its narrow frame and into sort of the applications to daily human functioning. So I would aim that anything we discuss here is actually not just waffle, it's useful. And my wish would be that it inspires people, that it puts them back in touch with the magical self somehow, that in hearing someone else's story, seeing what someone else is doing, that people listening to this push beyond their own limits and have a more transcendent sense of self. So that would be my wish. How about you?
My wish, my aim is for this to raise consciousness, especially for me, for that the subconscious part that's at the back to come online and be conscious, for the conscious mind to be aware of the subconscious behaviors. That would, for the listeners, for myself, for us, and then my wish. So my wish is, for me coming here, for us to create this, I definitely moved out of my comfort zone. Like I was talking earlier about my journey, and it was, and so my wish is that it does that for other people, that it activates them in ways and gets them in contact with their essence of who they are on some level, so that they can start creating even more from that place. Because I think the more people do that, the more this will start to raise that consciousness, that collective consciousness. The more we start helping, the more the more we start shifting this collective consciousness on generosity, on creativity, on unconditional love. The more we do great things.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thanks for spending your precious time with us today. We hope you got something from this discussion and that it made you think or enriched your life in some way, or has even just sparked a good conversation with somebody you love. So if you feel to, it helps us reach more people if you rate, review, maybe leave some stars. And of course, if you've got any comments, any ideas for us, please just message us on Instagram. And we look forward to being with you again in the future.